General Grievous is one of Star Wars' most unique antagonists. He's the embodiment of being more machine than man, using cybernetic enhancements to push himself far beyond the capabilities of organic beings, allowing him to participate in the world of the Jedi and Sith without having a connection to the Force. He's also not treated terribly well by the films and by Star Wars: The Clone Wars, especially when you compare their portrayals of Grievous to those of Legends sources, such as the 2003 Clone Wars microseries in which Grievous first appeared. In the 2003 microseries and many Legends stories that came out around the same time, General Grievous was terrifying, a seemingly unstoppable threat, in sharp contrast to his portrayal in the films. This disparity has led many to claim that Grievous was nerfed between his original appearance and his more well-known ones, but that story isn't entirely true.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Let's start by comparing a few different portrayals of General Grievous, beginning with the Clone Wars microseries. Grievous appears at the end of the microseries' first season, in which he's introduced as a new, unstoppable droid general that hunts Jedi. In a stunning display of lightsaber skill, he ambushes 5 Jedi at once and bests all but one of them. The first encounter ends in a cliffhanger, which is resolved at the start of the microseries' second season. The end of the Battle of Hypori softens the blow a little by having some of the Jedi Grievous defeated survive, and by having ARC troopers drive him off for long enough to rescue them. General Grievous goes on to be the main antagonist of the second season, which details the early stages of the Battle of Coruscant and Grievous's kidnapping of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Through it all, Grievous is fast, relentless, and undeniably cool. He's intimidating as hell, and unlike his future appearances, he doesn't talk all that much, which adds to the effect. Compare that to General Grievous's portrayal in Revenge of the Sith. While the film makes him fairly imposing and decently threatening in combat, he now lacks the overbearing intimidation factor. Unlike the Jedi in Clone Wars, Obi-Wan and Anakin aren't scared of Grievous, and they're shown to be on more or less equal footing with the droid general. A big part of this drop in intimidation is how Grievous acts more like a conventional cartoon villain. He does the classic evil cackle a lot, and he's also fond of retreating when the odds aren't in his favor. In most episodes, Star Wars: The Clone Wars went further in this direction with Grievous. In some episodes, he's treated almost as a joke, and he gets outmaneuvered by Ahsoka Tano and even some Gungans at some point. He's even more cackly and he retreats pretty regularly. With that said, there are also some episodes in which Grievous is given a more favorable portrayal. There's Grievous Intrigue, in which he defeats a Jedi Master and outsmarts Anakin and Obi-Wan. There's Massacre, in which he absolutely dunks on the Night Sisters. And there's the cancelled Crystal Crisis story arc, which in our opinion is one of his best appearances, making him a truly intimidating antagonist once more, especially since it has him beating Obi-Wan.
General Grievous, I demand your surrender. I shall assume this means you're not going to surrender.
Even then though, none of these later portrayals are nearly as fearsome as Grievous's original appearance. So what gives? Let's start by examining that claim we mentioned at the beginning, that Grievous was nerfed. In some Clone Wars episodes, this could be argued. Ahsoka certainly shouldn't have been able to survive that first encounter with him, at least. But on the whole, this claim doesn't really work. Grievous doesn't really lose any abilities or become any less skilled after the 2003 Clone Wars, apart from a handful of moments in the Clone Wars that are really just a matter of mediocre writing. And in fact, it's somewhat overstated how powerful he was in the original microseries. That scene where he absolutely curb stomps the Jedi on Hypori was really only a one-off thing in the microseries itself. His performance throughout the show's second season, which he spends most of chasing Palpatine and his Jedi escorts, differs only from some of his later appearances in that he talks a lot less. Later portrayals of Grievous were also capable of chasing the Jedi halfway across Coruscant, battling them to a draw every now and then killing 2 of them in an ambush by using his extra arms as a trump card. Grievous' set of abilities never changes. He's always very fast and very strong, though the extent to which this is apparent depends on the animation style. He's always good at whipping lightsabers around in ways that disorient Jedi, and he's always decently clever, though not on a Grand Admiral Thrawn level. The difference between his various appearances isn't about power level, but presentation and writing. Grievous is scarier in the Clone Wars microseries because he was written like a horror movie antagonist. He's treated not as a character, but as a malevolent force, something that can only be escaped, not defeated. The protagonists he faces never even consider trying to stop him. They're just trying to get away from him. Grievous is intimidating in these episodes not because he's powerful, but because he displays his abilities in an overwhelming way, and because he just never stops coming. Later appearances of his simply weren't written that way, and that's mostly a good thing. Grievous wasn't meant to be a horror villain, and while that portrayal suited the microseries, it wouldn't have worked nearly as well for Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars, which needed him as a proper antagonistic character. Horror monsters don't have depth or character by their very nature. Characterization would make them more relatable, more human, and thus would diminish the horror factor. Horror monsters rely to an extent on fear of the unknown and the mysterious, which Clone Wars employs with Grievous in moderation, especially in his first appearance. The microseries portrayed Grievous the way it did because the character's sole role in the series was to hype himself up. In later portrayals, he had much more of a purpose and thus required much more depth. General Grievous has a purpose in Star Wars beyond just being a cool Jedi Slayer. As we've discussed in past videos, he, like Darth Maul and Count Dooku, was written in the prequels to represent an aspect of Darth Vader. In Grievous's case, being more machine than man. Grievous is the ultimate extreme of cyborg enhancement, a being who uses technology to far outstrip the capabilities of ordinary organic forms. As we've discussed in the past, his character is written best when this theme is emphasized, as in Labyrinth of Evil, a Legends novel that makes a point of depicting Grievous as droid-like in personality as well as form. Grievous thinks like a machine, and he acts totally without humanity or compassion. As the Revenge of the Sith novelization puts it, his droid parts have more compassion than what remains of his alien flesh. In both a literal and a metaphorical sense, General Grievous is a man who became a machine, unfeeling and inhuman, the perfect leader for the CIS droid army. His machine nature gives him incredible abilities, allowing him to stand up to Jedi. But, to paraphrase Darth Vader, no technological terror is a match for the power of the Force. General Grievous was never unstoppable. In his original appearance on Hypori, he still has to take evasive action when the Jedi use the Force against him. The reason he beats them so badly is because they're so tired and so rattled by his appearance that they rely on their lightsabers instead of the Force. Later appearances in the microseries underscore this. The Force is a constant setback for Grievous, and he only beats the Jedi when he scares them so shitless that they either can't concentrate enough to meaningfully use the Force, or forget to do so. Grievous's later appearances only further underscore this weakness of his. The Clone Wars microseries addresses this explicitly, during a sequence in which Grievous is training with Count Dooku. Disney won't let us post the full clip, but to quote Dooku's lesson, "Remember what I taught you, General. If you are to succeed in combat against the best of the Jedi, you must have fear, surprise, and intimidation on your side. But if any one element is lacking, it would be best for you to retreat. You must break them before you engage them." Grievous follows this strategy in all of his major appearances. In the microseries, he only attacks Jedi and only wins when he has a distinct advantage. He waits for the Jedi on Hypori to be exhausted, surrounded, and hopelessly outnumbered, and when he makes his move, he takes time to freak them out before actually attacking. On Coruscant, he fights alongside Magna Guards for backup most of the time, and he's constantly trying to disorient and destabilize the Jedi, which is how he ultimately kills Fal Mudama and Roron Korob. General Grievous has always required fear, surprise, and intimidation to beat Jedi. He wins by keeping them so off balance that they can't meaningfully use the Force. This is a key part of his character. What he does is essentially scare Jedi into relying on their lightsabers, on their technology, and on their physical strengths instead of the Force. In other words, he baits Jedi into fighting on his terms, and so he wins. Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars just give Grievous far fewer opportunities to do this, putting him up against opponents who aren't so easily intimidated. And when Grievous finds himself in circumstances where those tactics aren't working, he usually does what Count Dooku told him to do. He retreats. Grievous's love of a good retreat is often decried as an example of how later depictions of the character have made him into a coward. To that, we quote Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica. "This isn't dueling pistols at dawn. This is war. You never want to fight fair. You want to sneak up behind your enemy and club them over the head." Beyond that though, it's always been a factor in his character. Grievous has never been a brave, honorable warrior. He preys on them because he isn't nearly that foolish. He doesn't fight fair. His very design, which gives him 4 arms and the ability to use lightsabers with them all at once, is meant to give him an unfair advantage. Grievous is a machine whose aim is to win. Machines know no honor, and neither do winners in war. Like the Clone Wars as a whole, Grievous deconstructs the myth of the noble war, just as he deconstructs and makes a mockery of the ways of the Jedi. That's what makes Grievous an interesting character, his perceived power level notwithstanding. But what do you think? Are you a General Grievous enjoyer, or do you have bad taste in antagonists? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below.